Research culture can be very isolating, competitive rather than collaborative. We wanted to see if there was a better way of doing research.
I think we all brought different disciplines into genuine conversation with each other. We found joy in the process of sharing and collaborating. We were united by our interest in marginalised perspectives, exploring women's lives and experiences, to build a community of inquiry, looking at questions around gender, crime, violence and protest. Who are we? Why do we do what we do? And I think behind these questions is the question of, well, how can we do it better? And as an implication of that, how can we make the world better? So when I start talking about women and revolution, one of the things people like to say is, there weren't any female revolutionaries. They were wrong. This is Claire Jung. She was a Berlin-based writer, revolutionary, and later anti-fascist. She was involved in hiding deserters, she smuggled guns, and she served time in prison as a result of these activities. And so her strategy when she was arrested was to basically pretend that she was very, very respectable, very bourgeois, and very, very stupid. It meant that she got a shorter prison sentence, and so when she was released, she was then able to carry on with exactly what she was doing before. And I love this quotation from her: "I'll fetch the guns, a woman is always less suspicious."
I'm a sociologist in criminology. In criminology, we have a great moral responsibility towards those we interview, and we must protect their identities. I observe in courtrooms and prisons and interview prisoners, judges and prosecutors. Currently, I study institutional racism in criminal justice. I've been looking into that field for 12 years now, and for the longest time I thought that being a researcher implied being neutral. But then a colleague helped me. She said, but it's not a private opinion you have, because it's based and builds on your research that you've been doing for a decade long. And now I'm very outspoken against it. I was in Parliament and said we need to abolish this. Putting someone into prison because they cannot pay a fine should not exist, full stop. It should be taken out of the law books because it's a matter of classism and most often also racism.
I'm a political theorist. I'm exploring women's resistance experience in the 2011 Egyptian revolution. I want to delve into women's resistance experience and the ambiguities of women's resistance experience. So I look at the risks, the possibilities, the dilemmas that women resistors confront that are usually obscured within the dominant frameworks of resistance, which tend to be very masculine. Women protesters were subjected to violence, to sexual violence, to abuse, to assault by the members of the regime, such as the army and the police. And so one example was the practice of virginity tests, right? Women resistors were subject to virginity tests by military doctors. And it wasn't just the regime. So the attackers, those who participated in those mass sexual assaults, came from all sections of society, even from the ranks of the revolutionaries. So one protester, for example, said, "The revolution now means nothing to me if women's rights are not honored." It's important to create a space for dialogue between academics, activists, and artists. We should not be approaching the activists as mere objects of or sources for our research, but be willing to engage in an equal dialogue and learn from their grassroots knowledges. I found that women's resistors' vulnerabilities, dilemmas, and disappointments can become sources of new hope.
I'm a sociologist from Budapest.
What is the price of activism? What does the activist risk? So I start with my mother. One of the mornings, she was crossing the bridge all alone on her feet. So she was walking through the Margaret Bridge, and all these Russian tanks came opposite her. At the age of 17, she was still a secondary grammar school student. She joined the university students in the marches. Demonstrations were without arms, yet they were shot. So one of her schoolmates was shot dead next to her in front of the parliamentary building. Actually, my auntie knows that my mom was also smuggling weapons later to the freedom fighters. I wonder if her story has anything to do with my interest in activism and movements. I wonder.
My research aims to uncover the experiences of violence that Austrian citizens faced during the First World War. Reading their personal papers allows me to share in their emotions, to question what we know about violence in the past. For instance, in a stirring account of the extreme starvation she experienced during the blockade, Marie Medicus describes impossible queues for food and burying her potatoes along with her silverware during the revolutionary days. When the food situation in Salzburg worsened during the revolutionary days of 1918, many citizens turned to illegal ways of getting food. Food shortages exacerbated pre-existing tensions between classes and national communities. Hunger becomes a space in which, or a feeling which provokes political activism and protest. I feel a responsibility towards the dead, especially those who have been marginalised by traditional scholarship, to let their experiences be heard.
My research experience is really that we need to work together. And so we sort of tap on different brains.
And it's only through when you start talking to other people and listening to each other that you learn new things.
My central research questions are, where are the women and what changes if we take them seriously as historical agents? If we answer these questions, if we centre the experience of women and other marginalised subjects, we move from a distorted, partial view to a much broader and more complete understanding of history.
Everything will change. Are you ready to be the change?
Research can be a very solitary, highly personal affair, and to spend days with like-minded colleagues discussing how and why we do what we do has been an almost revolutionary moment for me.
Stop there. We have created a new feminist and critical network.
The fact that it was enormous fun wasn't trivial. It was absolutely central to creating an environment where we could all be comfortable sharing our ideas without feeling exposed.
We found common grounds in our commitment to our research, our sense of responsibility to our subjects, and our struggle to balance meeting the expectations of our fields with our own desire to challenge them.
We have been taken out of our researcher comfort zones. We're united in our shared mission to put marginalised voices back into the story.
We take home the liberating atmosphere of co-creating. I think we managed to equip each other with loads of encouragement and inspiration for our future work. For too long, the minds of men have ruled. At least now, I ask you to let your heart speak through your minds.
For the birds and the bees and the land and the sea and the sky. Be a rebel.